It's start time with the star Roddy Rod.
It's your girl Maiden Putty, and you're now listening to Star Time.
It's Star Time, and I'm your host, the Star Roddy Rod. Welcome. You can call me the Star Roddy Rod, or just plain Roddy. So, welcome to the first episode of Star Time. On this show, you'll begin to know a little bit about me, background, my opinions, everything, get to know me a little bit more personal. So this is all me. On this episode, I'm going to break down how I became who I came to be. So, introducing myself to the world, my name is Roderick. I lived in East New York all my life. I grew up in a house. I have 5 siblings, 3 sisters, and 2 brothers. But one brother passed away as I was at least 10 or 11, so I definitely didn't know him. Growing up, my brother, he was damn near like 30 years older than me, so I can't really say I had a big brother type of environment, because by the time I was little, he already had his first son. And it's weird because my first nephew is 3 years older than me. So it's like, we go out and we can't even call each other uncle, nephew. We gotta call each other first names because it sounds weird knowing that I have a family member that's older than me, that in blood relative, they're my nephew. So, growing up, my parents owned the house and we always had tenants. So people lived there for a short time and a different tenant came in, a different family. So there was always people around. I grew up, had babysitters up until my oldest sister was a teenager. At least 14 or 15, I had babysitters in the house. So, it was good having babysitters, come get us prepared to go to school, come do the homework. Because my parents would by the time I wake up in the morning, they were both going out the house. My mother, she worked nights. And then my father, he had to get out the house from like 6 o'clock every morning to get to his job. So, growing up in this environment, was a little difficult for me because I was the only boy. Ideally, I was the only boy. I lived with my 2 sisters. I had an older sister and a younger sister. And it was just us 3 through childhood. Now, being the only boy, I had to deal with a lot of weirdness because I wasn't your average kid. I wasn't into sports. I was really weird into sports. I was playing basketball and, the guys on the court would clown me. The guys on the court would say they would dunk on me. I didn't even know how to dribble. So going to gym during my early years, elementary school, I would just sit there. I wouldn't even play in the basketball. I would just sit there and talk to somebody or, do any other sports that they had. Like, as I got older, I was just known as awkward because I wasn't doing what the average kid did. And this is also me having to learn how to do things for myself because I didn't have an older influence. So as I started to become a child in childhood, I would see the neighborhood boys, go run, do things, be outside all day, all night. I wasn't into all of that. The neighborhood boys, they didn't even know how to interact with me, and they were all rough and dogged because I lived in the bad neighborhood, so they were all rough and dogged guys. I couldn't relate. I couldn't talk to them. So it was like, going to elementary school. You'd be on the playground. You just would stick out like a sore thumb. I did used to go to Catholic school for a little bit, like 2 to 3 years at St. John Cantius, and then my parents transferred us to public school. Now, when I went to Catholic school, it was basically a gang of us. It was like about 6 of us, me, my sisters, my niece, and my nephews that were of age, was all going to school at the same time. So once I went into elementary school, like this was around 4th grade, everybody separated. It was just me and my little sister. And public school was a little hard because my sister was very competitive. I used to come in second to everything. She'd get the best grades. She'd always be the popular one. People would look at us trying to figure out who was older. Because I was a very timid person. And we get around people and she'd be the star. She'd be the one to shine. They would say that I was her shadow. So growing up going through that through those years was very rough because, I wanted to be my own person. And I was already labeled an awkward kid from that age, knowing that, I wasn't like these regular guys, that was outside doing stuff, playing ball, had a group of guys around them. So I basically ended up just finding people that wanted to talk to me, and then it wasn't until I ended up being in 5th grade that I ended up seeing one of my closest boys, Michael, and he was very similar in characteristics to me, so it kind of worked out as friends because he was very shy, he was very timid. We will meet up on the playground and we'll just sit there in the corner. We wouldn't play ball, nothing. So it's just something that was good, to finally meet somebody that I could relate to, But when you graduate from 5th grade, you basically start over. So as I was growing older, even as I was meeting guy family members, guy friends, people that were like coming around my family as extended family, it was a very awkward situation trying to interact with the guys because I wasn't athletic. I was playing video games, but the video games I would play would be games like Crash. Because of my homeboy, I was very into Sonic. Thanks. Shout out to him. Like I would go to his house and he'd play whatever he wanted to play, Mortal Kombat, all types of stuff. But he would play Sonic, and I would play with him. So I'm glad that he introduced me to Sonic, because up to today I still play Sonic, Crash. But when they would have other games playing on video games, I would just sit there. I wouldn't know what to do. And you know, as I got older, I went to junior high. The same awkwardness started to become. So, as I started to go to school, when I started to go to classes, I started to just, stick to myself, because I realized that, I wasn't meeting a group of friends that I could relate to. I wasn't going to after school programs primarily due to the fact that I don't do the things that they do. And I had to I would go home and write poetry, write songs. And it'll be brightest day after school. So that was how I was. That was basically how I used to get out my fun, doing poetry, doing music, writing music in my book, playing on Nintendo Game Boy. Those are things I used to do until it was bedtime. So going through this has really caused me to think. I was always known as the timid, shy, awkward boy. Even as I was growing up, it would be me and my sisters, and if I would go somewhere and I didn't like or mix with anybody that I was going around, I just stayed quiet. So as I got older, I was just trying to find myself and do what I was going to do while I was in school. In the summer, I would go to camp, but I would always get teased because doing sports was just it was just embarrassing for me. Whether it was basketball, football, it was just something that, not being athletic when you're young, it raised a lot of eyebrows to older family members. So from I would get ridiculed from a lot of family members. I get talked about behind my back by a lot of family members. The good thing about that is my sisters was always had my back when people would say snide remarks about how awkward or weird I become. And this is something that, I just realized is part of me. So one thing that was also weird was because I was so awkward and weird that the girls that I would date or meet were very aggressive and very bullyish, I feel like, the ones that are pretty nice and pretty kind weren't matching with me. I feel like they weren't coming around. They didn't necessarily like me. So, as I got older, I just started to have to learn my identity. I had to learn, how to be the man. I was going into a lot of other things. I did modeling at one point. I had a my sister's grandmother did this modeling thing for the kids. And when I won, I was Mr. Young Model for a year. The modeling thing was very good. It boosts my confidence because once you're a model, you get a free limo trip home. You get to go around the city like you're a celebrity. No, these are things that made me boost my confidence a little bit more. This is when I started to become, confident in myself and think I could take over the world. Because I did things at such a young age. When I was doing this modeling, I think I was damn near 13 or 12. So, I was always a person who would avoid conversation. So I would be in class and a lot of people would start fights and start picking on me and calling me stuff and calling me names, and it was crazy, A lot of the females would just laugh, talk shit. So as I got into high school, things was a little weird my freshman year because, I didn't know nobody and it was a fresh start, Going to school, shout out to Paul Robeson. Your first year in Paul Robeson is going to be the roughest because you got all the seniors looking at you. People taller. I was a short guy in Robeson too, but by the way, I'm like 5'7". I'm very skinny. So I think when I was in high school, I was damn near like 140 pounds. Easily bait to all these tall and gigantic dudes that was going to that school. So as I was just the nerdy kid that did his work, was quiet. But a lot of people, they don't want to see you do that. They want to test you. They want to see you talk. They want to know what you about. They want to test your patience. So got into a lot of stuff when I was in high school. I was, setting up and I was also working at the Children's Museum while I went to school. And the Children's Museum opened my eyes to my first work experience. So as it was my first work experience, I met somebody that I would always call a friend called Ray Sean. Me and him was just good friends, I didn't even mess with anybody in my high school, but I was so excited to go to the museum because we go after school and work there. So I was so excited to go there every day, even if I had to go once a week or twice a week. Because the people there, they started to communicate with me. They started to become more, I started to become affiliated with them. There was acquaintances, but, the personality my friend Ray Sean had, he was really a true friend. He really helped me break out of that shyness during that time as well. So things got better as I went to high school though. Like as the years went by, I started to become more known in the school, and a lot of people saw me and they was like, "Yo, don't mess with him." They started seeing me around a lot of people and be like, "You know him?" Like, yeah, what? So, so the things started to look up, it started to become, I know that even when I was in high school, I was still this awkward kid because, going to gym, I still wouldn't play. I would just sit on the benches. And one year, I did weight room. Now, weight room was kind of embarrassing because I was scrawny and I haven't worked out a day in my life. And the guys that was doing the weights in the weight room, they really were testing me, trying to put more weights on than I could handle. good thing the gym teacher was there to lift the heavy weights off me. But yeah, it's really crazy when you go through these experiences. And you know, so I was just glad that by the time I got to 11th grade in high school, my nephew and my cousin had went to the same school with me. So at that point, it wasn't like I didn't feel alone. I already built up a reputation in the school of being the man, of being this cool, fly dude, this cool dude, walking around. So yeah, high school years just got a lot better, It was very difficult with the females in there because a lot of the girls in there just wasn't taking me serious, But it is what it is, The more jocks and the more popular guys was gonna get the ladies regardless, And then, as I got to 11th grade, I started to learn more about what the school could offer, such as the B-Cow room and the writing center. And that was the year I met my bros that I talk to still to this day. So I graduated school, and I was so grateful that I was auditioning for the Blaze Up clique, and I really felt like I fit in at that point in my life. So, coming into the BUC was good because I knew people already in it. It felt like home. I already knew who RJB was. I already seen Rondell for like a year or two because he was dating this girl Trina in my year. So I already seen Ken Mr. Gentleman around, so I already knew him. And seeing Sign Squirrel around the hall, that was something, Cause seeing them again, I didn't know them, but I've seen them. So I felt at home. I felt like I belonged because it was my college years and we was always doing stuff. So it felt like the best years of my life because I was actually fitting in. I was actually going with them places. This is probably the first time I actually rode the train to the city, outside of Brooklyn on my own. Going to the pool hall, going to play football in the field, being around friends all summer, going out on Friday nights. This is when I started to belong. So it's like you grow, you meet your crowd, and I had to believe that things weren't always going to be the way they were. Like I wasn't going to always be this awkward kid that didn't belong, and this was a time that made me feel like that because I didn't feel like that because I had belonged. I had friends to go out with. I had friends to hit up, and it felt good. It felt good, doing this. And they were about what I was about: music, writing, performing, making music. So at the end of the day, we had similar interests, and it actually got me to get away from my sisters at that point because if I wasn't in school, I was in my room. If I wasn't in my room at that point, I was around my family member, mainly my sisters and their friends or cousins. So so this is basically how I develop, had to develop myself as a person. And this is how I became aware of being this awkward person, but wanting to belong in something, wanting to know that, yeah, I don't play sports. Yeah, I don't play shooting video games. Yeah, I'm not a guy that's out here smashing like 20 girls, or I'm not a guy that's out here doing random stuff, that's not good. That's illegal. But walking a straight path, and just had to learn to be myself. And this is what I really glad, because they were their self, and they really kept telling me, yo, just be yourself, be yourself. So going into college, I started to be myself, and I started to accept that I was an awkward person and I was different. I had to accept that I was different from everybody. I had to accept that I'm moving at my own pace and not the person next to me pace. I had to accept it. And for a long time I did. I just followed my own path. I got out of school. It took me 5 years to finish, but I took my time. I was still a little envious because I was still in competition with my little sister. We in college together, and she finished her bachelor's, and then she finished her master's. And I didn't go back for my master's because I know my limitations. I know I dislike writing thesis. I know I dislike writing essays. I would get in shock mode if some professor said they want a 5-page essay or a 10-page essay. I couldn't do it. I know that myself. So, growing up, my father was working during the day. He was with us during the night. And I could say that my father doesn't really know how to relate to me. He don't know how to raise a guy like me into who he is. But he also understands that I don't like to do housework, as in house, hammer, walls. I wasn't interested in none of that. So as a father, it kind of turned him off. It wasn't until later on that he kind of understood that I can't be a carbon copy of him. And I'm my own man. Like, my name wasn't Junior. My name is Roderick. It's, I'm my own person. So it took him years to understand that. It took a lot of beatings, and it took a lot of talks to understand that, I'm my own person, but I'm not your average kid. I'm not your average guy who you see running and doing all these things as opposed to the next guy. Granted, I try to stick to this path of doing the right thing, pleasing my parents, and I will never be able to please my parents because I'm myself, and they know who I am from birth, so even they are counting on my downfall at times. Don't get me wrong, it was kind of hard for me to finish college, but I did it. It was very hard to find a job in my field. By the way, I do IT support in offices. So workplace, office work, I do that for career. And that's what I went to college for. I graduated with a computer systems degree, and I was ill determined to get some sort of job in that field. I didn't give up and I made it. It was very hard to go years without work, to go years with sitting at home, having to rely on other people to give me money just to eat, give me money just to get on the train, give me money to go to interviews. You know, it was very hard to do it, but I was only going to do things the legal way. No, I wasn't going to do anything illegal and unlawful to get money during that time. You know, I'm not going to lie. Over the years, I felt naive to things, to scams. I was a little gullible to stuff, trying out stuff to see if it worked. I learned my lesson. The honest way is the best way, the honest working way. Going out there, putting in the hours, clocking in, showing up to work. That's the honest way. You know, I always knew that I was this weird and awkward kid. Even family members would stop talking to me entirely or ignore me or avoid me entirely. And that felt bad. Like, y'all my own family. Y'all treat me like somebody that you would see on the street, you know? Or because you don't like me or you don't like the way I move. I mean, I am who I am, and I came to this episode to tell you that I embrace who I am. And even now, you know, people look at me weird because, you know, I'm 34. You know, I'm 34. I live alone. I'm single. I'm living a single life right now. But this is not what I envisioned for 34. I envisioned that I would have found the one and started having a family. But I know that time is coming, so I just gotta be patient. Patience is not something that's the best thing, that's the easiest thing for me to do. No. Sometimes even working hard might not be the best thing for me. Sometimes I want to take shortcuts. But I've learned from mistakes that being lazy and not putting your all, you won't get the result you want. You won't get the results you want by cutting corners and being lazy. And even though I'm saying this to you, the audience, I got to keep it in my back of my mind that when I'm working towards a goal, I gotta keep my head up. And that's just what it is. So, like, even during the college years, you know, I felt like I belonged because me and my friends were promoters. You know, YPG, we was promoters. And they started to go out to these clubs every week. And when we first started going out, it was a gang of us. I remember seeing pictures and the Facebook memories of us being rolling deep. 10, 12 people, girls and guys. And basically, you know, I kind of miss those days a little bit. I sort of wish we could get back to those days, but you know, times has changed, and I realized that, you know, change change is inevitable. You have to embrace change. You have to understand that change is there, that nothing's gonna stay the same. People, like, I look around, a lot of people that I know are either first time parents or second time parents. There's not that many people that I know in my personal life who isn't a parent right now. And because of that, I let them be. You know, I won't bother you because I know you have a small baby to take care of. So, it's really something I'm trying to do right now to get back to me, like get back outside, because during this pandemic, I was homebound. I was going through my health problems. No, now in 2023, I realize I'm a social being. I have to get back outside. I have to meet people. I'm my happiest when I'm meeting people and feeling vibes. Being isolated is something that I don't like. It's not part of me. So, yeah, this is my story of my awkwardness, growing up as an awkward kid. And now, being a man who's actually 34, time has passed. I go out into the world and I'm looked at as the awkward adult, because a lot of people don't understand how I'm my age and I don't have certain things going for them. Or deep down they're probably jealous that, I live this free, single life where I can get up, go do what I want. I don't gotta answer to nobody. But you're at home and you gotta take care of kids. You gotta find babysitters. You gotta do what you gotta do. And all the money that I make, even though I pay a lot of money for bills, goes back to my pocket. So, this ends my story of me being the awkward adult. Over and out. This is the Star Roddy Rod, and I'm the host of Star Time. So I want to tell y'all about this awesome show that I'm on called the Premier Boys Podcast, where it's just me and 3 other brothers, Ken Mr. Gentleman, Ken Talk Aaron Sands, and Long Live the Chief Mally Mal, discussing topics of the culture and our opinions, latest news topics, latest stories, scandals, and we have a lot of fun doing this, We talk our own opinions. Sometimes it's real raw, real raunchy, and sometimes it's just fun and games. So, listen to it with an ear, of enjoyment. We're here to entertain you, We talk about topics of the news. We talk about reviews of shows. We just talk about anything from music to current events and everything in between. So you can catch us on Wednesdays on all streaming platforms with the exception of Spotify. So after you listen to this, go right ahead and listen and subscribe to the Premier Boys Podcast. Recommended by me, the Star Roddy Rod of Star Time. All right. Star Time. It's the first wrap up of the first episode of Star Time. And it's me, the star Roddy Rob. Or you can just call me Roddy or Roddy Rob. So thank you for listening to this first episode. You know, when you're in your own body, you just gotta embrace who you are. 34 years in this body. You know. So subscribe wherever you're listening to this. Like. If you want to message me, I'm available on Instagram at the Star Roddy Rod. Check me out right now on the Premier Boys podcast every Wednesday, featuring Ken, Mr. Gentleman, King Talk Aaron Sands, and the Chief Mally Mal. Also, listen to me on the Old School Show with Ken, Mr. Gentleman. And you already know, I like to give a shout out to the Adjourn podcast for having me on the episode of Navigating Life Without Kids, Part 2, Men Who Don't Have Kids. Check that out right now on Adjourn podcast or streaming platforms that they're on. That's my recommendation for today. Shout out to y'all at Jordan Podcast. I know y'all probably gonna listen to this and get hyped. So you already know that was a good episode that really dived deep into being a man at my age who don't have any kids and how the obstacles I go through on a daily basis. So that's a bonus listen for y'all. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next episode. This is Star Time, and I'm out.
It's your girl Maiden Petty, and you're now listening to Star Time.